"I can't be the father," she whispered, almost inaudible, but the weight behind those words slammed into me harder than any truck on I-35. I froze, my hand hovering over the countertop where my morning coffee sat half drunk, the steam curling like a warning I didn't understand yet. "My name is Daniel Carter, 38, software project manager in Austin, Texas, married to Laura for 12 years, father of 2 kids I had loved as my own since the day they were born." And yet, in that moment, the foundation of my life cracked in a way I couldn't ignore. I remember the first time I saw Laura. It was at a small diner off South Congress Avenue, the kind of place where neon signs buzz and the smell of fried bacon clings to your clothes all day. She was laughing at a joke some guy at the counter had made, messy dark hair falling into her eyes, jeans ripped just enough to make it trendy but approachable, sipping coffee from a chipped ceramic mug. I, of course, pretended to be absorbed in my pancake order, though I must have been staring for half an hour before my friend nudged me and whispered, "Go talk to her, or you'll regret it forever." I went. She smiled. That was all it took. I was hooked. Our courtship was the kind of slow-burn American romance movies pretend to make. Road trips up to Dallas for football games, cookouts at my parents' place where she charmed everyone with her sweet potato casserole, Saturday mornings watching old ESPN highlights while our golden retriever sprawled across the couch between us. We built a life that looked perfect to anyone who passed us on the street. Matching minivans, Halloween costumes for the kids, holiday lights that made the neighbors jealous. And for years, I thought it was perfect. I really did. I trusted her with my heart, my family, my career, all of it. But, of course, life loves to remind you that appearances are just a veneer. I began to notice small shifts that didn't make sense at first. Laura started closing her laptop screen abruptly when I walked by. Her phone seemed glued to her hand, notifications disappearing faster than I could ask who texted. She'd say she was heading to a book club or meeting with a friend from work, but sometimes the stories didn't match. Gas receipts would appear in her purse from towns I didn't recognize. And once, just once, I caught a glimpse of a hotel loyalty card statement with a reservation in a city 3 hours away. She smiled nervously when I asked, blaming a conference, but the unease in her eyes lingered longer than her explanation. I didn't want to confront it at first. The idea that Laura, my partner, the mother of my children, could betray me felt impossible. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe it was work. Maybe I was imagining things. But deep down, something had shifted. The laughter we once shared over greasy diner pancakes had become rare. Dinner conversations shrank to monosyllables. The playful glances I once craved had been replaced by brief, measured eye contact that seemed to calculate, to hide, to avoid me. Our kids, Mia, 8, and Jacob, 6, were blissfully unaware. They were in that stage where they believed their parents were superheroes and could solve any problem, and I wanted to protect them as long as possible. So, I buried my suspicion, trying to convince myself that I was being paranoid. But the evidence, I couldn't shake it. There were moments when she'd leave the room to take a call, and I'd see her holding her phone close, whispering into it as though the conversation itself could shatter if anyone else heard. My stomach would twist, a silent warning that something was off, something bigger than any fight we'd ever had. I recall the morning everything began to unravel. It was early September, the sun slanting golden through our Austin backyard, dust motes drifting lazily over the swing set where Jacob had left his toy dump truck. Laura had made her usual pancakes, flipping them perfectly before serving Mia and Jacob. She handed me a plate with a smile that felt rehearsed. "Morning, hun," she said, but there was a tremor I almost didn't catch, a subtle quiver that told me her calm was fragile. I smiled back, trying to mask my unease, and sipped my coffee, feeling the bitter warmth coat my tongue and my dread coat my chest. The kids ran outside after breakfast to play, and I lingered at the table, pretending to scroll through emails while watching Laura clear the dishes. That's when I noticed it, a slip, a single text notification flashing briefly before she shoved the phone into her apron pocket. "He'll love seeing you again tonight. Don't tell him." My heart stopped. My hand, trembling, reached for the phone, but before I could, she turned with that practiced ease and asked if I wanted cream for my coffee. I nodded dumbly, my mind racing. Who was he? And why did it feel like a storm was about to descend on the calmest part of my life? I tried to push the thought away, but the seed had been planted. By lunchtime, I found myself wandering through the house, looking for something, anything, that could either confirm my fear or give me peace. Her laptop was open on the dining room table, password protected. As usual, her purse sat on the chair beside it, a lipstick smudge on the zipper, and a folded hotel keycard peeking from the pocket. I didn't touch it, not yet. I had to think, had to plan. My hands were shaking too much. My mind ran through every memory, every shared secret, every night she held me close. Could all of that have been a lie? That evening, after the kids were in bed, Laura came into our bedroom humming softly, brushing her hair in the mirror. She looked tired but content, a mask I was learning to read. I wanted to ask, no, I needed to ask, but the words caught in my throat. I couldn't confront her without proof. I had to be sure, concrete, undeniable. The idea of being wrong was unbearable, yet the idea of being right terrified me even more. Over the next few days, the tension became a pulse in the house. Every laugh from Laura seemed calculated. Every casual comment weighed like a riddle. And somewhere beneath the mundane, laundry piles, spilled cereal, the faint smell of motor oil from Jacob's latest backyard experiment, I felt the truth waiting to be uncovered. A truth I wasn't ready for, but couldn't ignore. That's when I decided to start looking. Quietly, methodically. A folder of photos on my phone, timestamps, location tags, receipts from places that weren't ours, iMessages synced between our devices. And finally, after a week that felt like a month, I came across something that would change everything. A DNA testing kit, delivered to our doorstep under Laura's name, the type used for paternity tests. My stomach churned, my hands shook, and suddenly, all the little signs, the strange glances, the sudden trips, the whispered phone calls, clicked into a horrifying puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to complete, but I couldn't stop myself. Not now, not when the stakes were my children. And then, late that night, I stared at the kit on the counter, imagining the results before they even existed. I thought of my kids, sleeping peacefully in their rooms, and the possibility that the people they called Dad might not really be mine. And then, like a shadow stretching across a once bright day, a name surfaced in my mind. Mark Henderson, my best friend since college, the guy who had been there through every heartbreak, every job change, every move. The same Mark who'd spent hours babysitting, coaching soccer, sharing laughs with Mia and Jacob, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to tear through our lives. I put my head in my hands, listening to the quiet hum of the ceiling fan, the distant chirp of crickets, the faint snore of a child in the next room. The room felt smaller, tighter, suffocating. And I realized, with a clarity that made my heart pound in my chest, that the life I had built, the life I had trusted was about to unravel in ways I couldn't imagine. The evidence was here, the signs had been there, and now only the truth could answer the question gnawing at my soul. Had my best friend really been the father of my children all along? And in that instant, I knew nothing in my life would ever be the same again. The morning after I found the DNA kit, I couldn't sleep. My mind was a restless storm, circling the same question over and over. Could Mark really be the father of my children? I paced the kitchen, cold light from the street lamp filtering through the blinds, coffee growing bitter in the mug I barely sipped. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant freeway traffic, a soundtrack that seemed almost cruelly normal for a life that was anything but. I decided to start collecting evidence, quietly, methodically, like a detective in one of those crime shows Laura used to complain she hated. I didn't want to alarm her, didn't want a confrontation until I had something concrete, but the truth was urgent. Every time she smiled at Mia or Jacob, I felt a pang of betrayal sharper than anything I'd imagined. If Mark had been hiding in plain sight, if my best friend had truly been closer than I ever realized, I needed to know before life continued under a lie I could no longer stomach. It began with the obvious, her phone. Laura was meticulous, always password protecting her screen, keeping notifications brief, never leaving a message open. But humans have habits, and I knew hers well. While she was in the shower, I synced her iMessages with my laptop through the cloud. There they were, innocuous at first glance, office chatter, mundane exchanges with friends. But buried between those lines were messages that made my chest tighten. One from a number saved as Mark H. Kids asleep, room clear, tonight. Another, days later, don't worry, everything's fine, see you at the hotel. My hands shook. I read each line twice, thrice, making sure I wasn't hallucinating, that the tiny details I'd noticed over months weren't paranoia, but signals clear as day once I saw them in black and white. I needed more. A receipt, a timestamp, anything tangible. I started scanning her purse while she was asleep, finding a gas receipt from a Shell station in Round Rock, time-stamped for 10:15 p.m. on a weekday. Round Rock wasn't far from Austin, but the timing made no sense for her supposed book club meeting. A folded hotel keycard slipped between the pages of a magazine caught my eye. I slipped it into my pocket, heart hammering, imagining the room she'd spent the night in. Mark there, while I had been home, assuming everything was normal. Then came the credit card statements. I don't know why she didn't hide these better. Maybe she trusted me blindly, or maybe she didn't think I'd notice. There it was, a Marriott charge for a weekend getaway, billed to Laura's name, but the location was clear, Dallas, the same weekend she claimed to be visiting her sister. I stared at the numbers, the hotel name, the city, and realized the puzzle pieces were aligning in a way I couldn't deny. My stomach turned, and a strange mix of rage and sorrow began to build. I took it further. Using the hotel loyalty program login tucked into her email, I discovered multiple stays I had no knowledge of, each one carefully timed when the kids were with my parents or asleep at home. I printed out the reservation slips, folding them neatly into a folder I labeled Evidence. I felt a grim satisfaction, a tiny sense of control in a life spinning out of my grasp. But even as I collected proof, a deep ache settled in my chest. Every reservation, every secret, was a dagger to the trust I had given without hesitation. Then came the small, human things, hints I hadn't noticed before, a perfume scent on her coat that wasn't hers, a crumpled napkin from a restaurant I'd never visited, a lipstick smudge on a coffee mug that hadn't been hers. I was cataloging these details like a forensic scientist, obsessing over the breadcrumbs she had left behind, and each one confirmed what my gut had been screaming for months. And finally, the DNA kit. I had resisted it for weeks, placing it on the counter like a silent threat. But one Sunday afternoon, with the kids at the park and Laura running errands, I tore the package open. The instructions were clinical, impersonal, almost mocking in their efficiency. Collect the sample, seal it, mail it off. It was simple, too simple, considering the magnitude of what it represented. My hands shook as I collected the swabs, each motion feeling like I was handling the delicate threads of my own shattered life. When I sealed the envelope and dropped it in the mailbox, a sense of both relief and terror washed over me. There was no going back. Days passed. I tried to maintain normalcy, joking with Mia about school projects, watching Jacob crash his little remote-controlled car across the hardwood, pretending to laugh at Laura's subtle jokes. But inside, I was waiting, counting the hours until the lab would email the results. I imagined every scenario, every denial, every excuse Laura could muster, but deep down, I knew the truth was waiting for me, patient and unyielding. One evening, my brother Jason stopped by, unaware of the storm gathering. We sat in the kitchen, beers sweating on the counter, discussing football stats and the usual weekend chores. I laughed, but a part of me was elsewhere, replaying every hidden detail I had uncovered, every whispered text and hotel receipt. Jason noticed, leaning back in his chair, raising an eyebrow. "You okay, man? You've been distracted lately." I forced a smile, nodding, but couldn't share the turmoil. This was mine to face alone, at least for now. The thought that Mark might be involved, that my own best friend had been a phantom father in my life, was a betrayal too sharp to voice without the confirmation in hand. Then came the moment I would never forget. My phone buzzed. A generic lab email. "Your DNA results are ready. Please log in to view." My pulse spiked. I stared at the screen, blinking, hesitating. Could I handle the confirmation? Did I even want to? Every rational part of me said yes. Every emotional part screamed no. I clicked the link, entered the password I had set up weeks ago, and the page loaded with my name, the kids' names, and one word that made my heart stop. Father match. Not mine. I reread it, the words blurred. My hands clutched the countertop for support. The tests showed with near perfect certainty that the father of my children was Mark Henderson, my best friend. My brother in arms through college football, late-night parties, even my father's funeral. The man I trusted implicitly, who held my kids, coached them, laughed with them, had been their biological father all along. I stumbled back, a wave of nausea hitting me. My mind raced, flashing through the past 12 years in sickening clarity. The late-night phone calls Laura never wanted to explain. The weekends out of town. Mark always being suspiciously available, always stepping in when I was too busy or tired. The small, subtle signs that I had ignored or rationalized away. They weren't coincidences. They were pieces of a puzzle, meticulously hidden, that now sat before me with a clarity so brutal it felt like a punch to the gut. And then, the sound that made the reality undeniable. Jacob, downstairs, laughing, shouting for Mark Henderson. Not Dad, not Papa, but Mark. My brain froze. I could hear the echo of that name in my home. The voice of the man I had considered a friend, a godfather to my children, now a father in every sense I had never imagined. I sank to the floor, surrounded by the scattered receipts, the printed emails, the hotel key cards, and the unopened bills. Every warning sign I had brushed aside became a nail in the coffin of my trust. Every instinct I had ignored, every small unease that had pricked at me for months, was validated in a way that left no room for doubt. The suspicion, once a faint shadow in my mind, had exploded into undeniable truth. And as I sat there, numbed, staring at the envelope containing the DNA results and the folder of proof, I realized something even more terrifying. The confrontation had to come. Not tomorrow, not next week. Tonight, or the delicate equilibrium of our family would collapse entirely, and there would be no going back from the truth I now held in my hands. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I could feel the weight of 12 years of marriage, 12 years of fatherhood, 12 years of trust and betrayal crushing me in slow motion. And in the back of my mind, the faintest, darkest thought whispered, Laura doesn't get to rewrite the story, not anymore. The evidence was irrefutable. The proof was in my hands. And now, all that remained was to decide how to confront the lies, the betrayal, and the man who had been hiding in plain sight all along. I waited until the weekend, telling myself I needed a neutral ground, a public space where tempers couldn't escalate too violently. The chosen battlefield, an upscale diner in downtown Austin, the kind with exposed brick, Edison bulbs, and a polished bar where the waitstaff knew your order before you said a word. I requested a booth near the back, strategically away from prying eyes, but close enough that the staff could witness any unusual behavior. The stakes weren't just emotional anymore, they were public, and I needed that validation. Laura arrived first, late as always, dressed in a blouse that screamed casual elegance. The one she'd bought just last week when she claimed to be shopping with the girls. She smiled distractedly, scanning the menu, as if the past months hadn't been a minefield of half-truths and hidden texts. I didn't greet her with warmth. I slid into the booth opposite her, the folder of evidence between us like a minefield I was about to detonate. Her eyes flicked up, immediately sensing the tension. "You said you wanted to talk," she said, her voice measured, almost rehearsed. "Is everything okay?" I exhaled slowly, controlling the tremor I could feel building. "Laura, I think it's time we stop pretending. The truth, it's in front of us." I placed the folder gently on the table, opening it to reveal the printed emails, hotel receipts, gas station slips, and, finally, the DNA results. The pages fanned out like a confession she hadn't given. Her eyes widened, scanning the documents without touching them, as if proximity would make the reality burn her. I don't, she started, but I held up a hand. Don't. My voice was calm, but the weight of my stare froze her words mid-air. "Do you want to explain this?" I tapped to the DNA report, the lab's logo glaring in black and white. Mark Henderson, biological father. She looked away, blinking rapidly, and for a moment, the diner's warm hum felt suffocating. Her silence was damning, but she found a weapon. Gaslighting. "I don't know what you're talking about. Are you seriously accusing Mark of this after everything?" I leaned forward, my fingers pressed against the table, collecting the strength I needed to finish the sentence I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my mind. "Mark is the father of our children, not me. Every hotel stay, every secret text, every unexplained weekend, everything points to him. And now we have proof." Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth as if to deny it, but the waiter, a young man named Ethan who had been observing the tension since the moment we arrived, froze in mid-step. I caught his eye, nodded subtly, and he stood quietly, pretending to refill water glasses but listening to every word. Laura realized the public nature of our setting, and for the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. "Mark, I didn't even need to say his name aloud. She knew the next move. And there he was, tall, broad-shouldered, appearing as if summoned by the tension itself. I had called him under the guise of needing to discuss something urgent about the kids. He walked into the diner, coffee in hand, eyebrows raised at the scene unfolding, his gaze flicking between Laura and me. "Is this about the kids?" he asked, curiosity laced with casual confidence. "Yes," I said, gesturing to the folder. "Everything about them." Mark's face shifted subtly, the briefest flicker of concern, enough to register if you were watching closely. Laura's mouth opened again, her defense faltering under the silent judgment of the staff and the few diners who now turned to observe the unfolding drama. I stood, sliding the folder toward both of them. "Do you want to see it for yourself?" I asked. The DNA report stared back at them, a mute witness to years of betrayal. Mark looked down, scanning the pages. "Wait, this can't be right," he stammered, his voice low. "There has to be a mistake." I shook my head. "No mistake. The lab's certified, the samples collected properly. Mia and Jacob, Mark, they are your children biologically. Laura, you knew." The diner went silent. The clink of silverware on plates seemed deafening. A couple near the counter paused mid-bite, craning their necks to see what was happening. I didn't care. The humiliation, the exposure, it was part of the reckoning. Laura's defense broke completely. Tears welled up, and she reached toward the folder as if trying to erase the evidence with her fingers. I didn't mean... It wasn't supposed to... It wasn't supposed to what?" I cut in, voice sharp. "Hurt me? Betray your marriage? Lie for over a decade while your children grew up calling my best friend Uncle Mark?" Mark stepped back, his face a mixture of shock and guilt. He looked at the kids' names on the DNA report, then at me, then back at Laura. I never... You never what?" I demanded, voice rising, though I tried to maintain control. "Take responsibility? Tell me. Protect them from the truth. I trusted you both, and you conspired to erase me from my own family." At that moment, the diner staff, including Ethan, who had been pretending to clean tables, now hovered slightly, giving the scene an involuntary audience. I could feel the weight of judgment pressing down, a public mirror reflecting the private betrayal. Laura's face was pale, the composed mask she usually wore shattered. I thought I was helping. I didn't want to hurt anyone," she whispered, pathetic in its inadequacy. I shook my head, my heart pounding. "Helping? You call secret hotel stays, lies, and a stolen fatherhood helping?" My voice echoed across the brick walls. A few diners murmured, someone dropped a fork, the sound ricocheting in the tense air. Mark finally spoke, his voice small, defensive. I didn't know how to what? Lie better? Avoid responsibility longer? Because congratulations, you succeeded, for 12 years. He flinched. Laura's tears streaked down her cheeks, the mascara smudging like ink on a confession. I pulled out my phone, opening the camera app. "And now the world sees your lies," I said, letting the lens hover over the table. Ethan, seeing the tension, nodded subtly, moving closer to witness silently. Mark's hand twitched toward the DNA report. I moved the phone, recording the exact moment he realized the consequences of exposure. He looked at Laura, at me, then back at the kids' names, finally realizing the gravity of everything we had ignored, rationalized, or lied about. This isn't fair," Mark muttered, voice low, more to himself than to anyone else. "Fair?" I laughed bitterly. "You think fairness had anything to do with it? 12 years of deceit and now you get to claim unfairness?" Laura's sobs grew louder. I wanted to protect the kids," she said, her voice breaking. "You didn't protect me or the truth, or them," I said, my tone icy. "You hid behind everyone's trust, pretending everything was normal while the foundation of our family rotted beneath our feet." A glass shattered somewhere near the counter, either a dropped bum or a napkin holder thrown in surprise by a startled diner. But it felt symbolic, the world reacting to the fracture I had been holding together in private. I glanced around. Witnesses everywhere. Ethan, the waitress, a few diners, even a barista at the espresso machine, all now silently observing. The public nature of exposure cementing the humiliation that words alone couldn't convey. I leaned in, voice low and cutting. And now the truth is out. There's no hiding, no erasing. You have to face it. Every lie, every secret, every stolen moment, all of it is out. Public, undeniable, permanent. Laura looked at me, fear and realization in her eyes. Mark's jaw tightened. The diner, once a neutral ground, had become a courtroom of morality. Samshis, and the gavel had already fallen, unspoken but absolute. The final blow came from a place I hadn't planned, my own kids' laughter. Mia and Jacob had returned from a weekend at my parents' house unexpectedly early, curious why Daddy's car was parked outside the diner. They ran up to the booth, oblivious to the tension, and in a moment that pierced the entire charade, called out in unison, "Uncle Mark!" Laura froze. Mark's face paled, and in that instant the reality crystallized for everyone in the booth, and perhaps for the entire diner. The deception, the betrayal, the lie. The lies. It was no longer secret. The silence that followed was deafening. The tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. And in that suspended moment, before words could be spoken, before apologies or defenses could take shape, I realized something chilling. This confrontation was only the beginning. Legal action, family upheaval, social scrutiny, it would all follow. And the reckoning, far from over, was just beginning to unfold. The days after the diner confrontation felt surreal, like I had stepped out of one life and into another where nothing was familiar, yet everything was painfully visible. Laura had moved into her mother's house, taking nothing but a suitcase and the echo of her own mistakes. Mark retreated into a shell of guilt, avoiding calls, texts, and even casual encounters at the neighborhood grocery. The kids, blissfully unaware of the full scope of the betrayal, were the only constants in my fractured world, their innocence a fragile thread holding me together. The divorce proceedings were messy, as expected. Lawyers volleyed documents across polished conference tables, their voices clipped and professional, the kind of cold efficiency that made your personal life feel like a spreadsheet. I had prepared meticulously, timelines of evidence, receipts, texts, DNA reports, and even photographic proof of Laura and Mark's interactions. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, asked questions with surgical precision. "Do you understand the implications of the paternity test?" she queried. "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, holding my voice steady. "I do, and I trust the court to enforce what is fair for my children." Fair. The word felt foreign, yet it anchored me. The court ruled in my favor regarding custody. The children would primarily live with me, with supervised visitation for Laura, restricted to ensure stability and consistency. Property and assets were divided according to the state law, but the emotional cost, the betrayal, the lost trust, the years spent believing in a false family narrative was beyond any legal measure. Mark's involvement in the children's lives was curtailed, a court-mandated acknowledgement of paternity without visitation rights, ensuring their emotional safety first. Returning home after the final hearing, I parked my truck in the driveway, taking a moment to breathe deeply. The front yard looked the same. Freshly mowed grass, the swing set still squeaking in the wind, the small garden Laura and I had planted together now blooming under my care. It felt almost unreal, the calm after the storm. Inside, the silence was heavy, but not suffocating, different from the oppressive tension of the past months. Mia and Jacob bounded in from the backyard, their laughter echoing through the living room. They were holding crayon drawings, colorful depictions of our little family adventures. A dog chasing a ball, a treehouse in the backyard, a stick figure labeled Daddy holding their hands. I took them in my arms one by one, holding them close. In that moment, the weight of betrayal, the anger, and the hurt all seemed to shrink, replaced by something raw and vital, presence. I cooked pancakes for them that morning, flipping them carefully, just as Laura had liked to do on lazy Sunday mornings. A Bud Light sat on the counter, half finished from the night before, a small reminder of my own indulgence and quiet reflection. The TV played ESPN in the background, the familiar commentary soothing in its routine, a background hum to the calm chaos of domestic life. The kids ate, laughing over syrup mishaps and butter smears, and for the first time in months, I felt the world righted itself, however precariously. Emails and messages from friends and family trickled in over the next few weeks, expressions of support, anger on my behalf, and a shared astonishment at the extent of the betrayal. Social media had picked up fragments of the story, the diner confrontation, blurred images of the folder on the table, but I had carefully controlled the narrative, ensuring that the children remained shielded from public scrutiny. I wasn't interested in revenge beyond the courtroom. The satisfaction of truth, exposure, and legal resolution was enough. On quiet evenings, I walked the neighborhood, sometimes past Laura's old house, now empty, sometimes past Mark's, now quiet and shadowed. The air smelled of cut grass and barbecue smoke, the American suburban scent I had once taken for granted. I reflected often, turning the pain into a strange kind of clarity. Betrayal is corrosive, I realized, but it also sharpens the mind, fortifies boundaries, and defines values with brutal precision. I had learned to let go of what I could not control, to protect what mattered most, and to recognize the people who were truly deserving of trust. Therapy sessions helped. The psychologist, a calm man named Dr. Harlan, guided me through processing the anger, the grief, and the disillusionment. "You're grieving not just a marriage, but a perception of family," he said one session. "It's natural to mourn what you believed in." I nodded, understanding that this grief wasn't weakness. It was the cost of clarity, the currency of truth. There were moments of strange humor that crept back into daily life. Mia once asked why Uncle Mark never came over anymore, her innocent tone unaware of the legal and emotional labyrinth behind it. I shrugged, smiling wryly. "Sometimes people make choices that change everything," I said, and she accepted it, moving on to show me a drawing she'd made at school. Humor became a balm, a subtle signal that life could continue with some joy despite the scars. The children adapted surprisingly quickly, their resilience both inspiring and humbling. They drew, played, and learned under my watchful eyes, slowly reclaiming the innocence that had been shadowed by deception. Dinner conversations returned to mundane debates. Should we watch the game or a movie, pancakes or waffles, cats or dogs? And the ordinary became extraordinary, a testament to survival and quiet victory. Evenings on the porch became my refuge, a Bud Light in hand, the children tucked in for the night, the hum of the city in the distance. I reflected on the absurdity of life's twists. 12 years of trust broken, yet here I was, intact in spirit and responsibility. Sometimes, life delivers lessons harshly, but leaves enough beauty intact to rebuild. The porch light glinted against the Bud Light can, the children's laughter still faint from the bedrooms, and I let a small, ironic smile escape. The final punchline, the truth I had come to embrace. Betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak are transient. Exposure of lies brings closure, not satisfaction of revenge. And sometimes, the universe balances its scales without intervention. I whispered to myself, a mantra learned the hard way. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. It became my quiet celebration of survival. I wasn't bitter, just wiser. The kids were safe, the truth was known, and the people who had hurt us were now confined by their own actions. Life had returned to a semblance of normality, the mundane filled with profound relief. I picked up the kids' drawings again, framing one of Mia's stick figure families on the wall by the kitchen. Each line, each color, a reminder that beauty and innocence could endure even in a household scarred by deceit. The camera of life had captured the worst, but it had also documented resilience. As the sun set, casting an amber glow over the living room, I realized that peace wasn't about erasing the past. It was about reclaiming the present. I poured myself a final sip of Bud Light, the metallic ring of the can crisp against my fingertips, and smiled at the quiet domestic tableau before me. 2 kids, a safe home, and a father finally at rest in the knowledge that truth, however late, had triumphed. And so life moved forward, ordinary yet sacred, flawed yet beautiful. Betrayal had left its mark, but it had not left me broken. The kids were safe, the lies exposed, and I had learned the most American of lessons: resilience, responsibility, and the irrepressible value of knowing your own worth. Sometimes, the loudest victories are quiet. Sometimes, the justice you seek is merely living well after the storm. And sometimes, all it takes is letting the trash walk itself out, leaving space for a life rebuilt from truth, love, and ordinary miracles.